wanna start a short series where I take a look at all the new weapons we got for the Sororitas class. I will talk about what I think of the weapon skills, how to use them, and what passives, perks, psalm doctrines and enchants I recommend for them. Starting with the combo weapons. We got 8 weapons that fall in the category combo weapon. 2 give us 4 weapon skills, the Inferno Pistol and Chainsword and the Bolt Pistol and Chainsword. 3 of them give us 3 weapon skills and 1 Act of Faith slot, the Plasma Pistol and Brazier, the Hand Flamer and Brazier, and the Plasma Pistol and Blessed Blade. And we got 3 with 2 weapon skills and 2 slots for Acts of Faith, the Chainsword and Rod, the Hand Flamer and Rod, and the Blessed Blade and Rod. In this part I will have a look at the first 2, starting with the Bolt Pistol and Chainsword. The first skill is pretty much the same thing we get from the standard Crusader Chainsword. Anyways, the attacks are interesting. It is a channeled skill, so as long as we are channeling it, it won't decrease our enrage tokens, because as long as we are channeling it, it counts as 1 attack. And if we have a neural implant with the enrage token on crit enchant, we can use the skill to generate enrage tokens. The pain will disable the target for a short time, and the traumatize will root the enemy in place, as long as you are channeling it. It also applies castigation marks, but more on that later. If your crit chance is high enough and the enemy survives long enough, then you can generate enrage tokens, as you can see. The second skill, full auto, is a salvo skill. This means as long as you shoot it, it counts as 1 attack again. So the same things for enrage tokens apply as for the first skill. Also consider the assault tag. To maximize your damage, you have to stay close to the enemies. The third skill is Assault Leap. You can see the skill has a lot of effects. The most interesting ones are knockback. With the short cooldown of the skill, we can interrupt champion and elite enemies with it, so it will be great for survivability. The high suppression damage is great too for the same enemy types, because they will have a suppression bar. And we get the before mentioned castigation trigger. It will consume the marks we placed on the target with our other skills and give us up to 5% damage reduction. It's not that strong, but a nice little bonus we can get constantly. The distance isn't that great, but the cooldown is pretty short. If you have decent cooldown reduction and skills like this one in the movement skill tree that reduces cooldown on crits, or this one in the single target skill tree, or you have perks like Tactician, then you can spam it a lot. The last skill is one of my favorite skills from all of her weapons. It's a new whirlwind ability, but this time using both the Bolt Pistol and Chainsword simultaneously. It is a channeled skill, so the same things apply again here as for the other two in regards to enrage tokens. It also deals high suppression again, which is great for a champion and other elite enemies. And because it's a channeled and salvo skill, you could get two benefits from your ranged combat tree. Like this one and this one. But also in your enchants. The thing to consider with this skill is that you can't cast it forever, because the bolter decreases your ammo, so you have to reload. So what you wanna get are things like ammo mastery in the ranged combat tree, enchants like the secondary enchant that increases your ammo, and perks like this one or this one. Because of the higher cooldown reduction of the skill, I highly recommend getting as much cooldown as possible in your build if you want to use it as your main skill.
Loading. Teleport beacon in range.
What I also want to say is that some doctrines like this one not only work on full auto, but they also work on whirlwind. On full auto, it's easy to recognize the difference. But on whirlwind it's harder. If you have a look at the impacts on the wall, you can see the difference. This one is without, and this is with it. Let me give you now some recommendations for this weapon. None of your skills has armor breaking or armor piercing. So I highly recommend that you socket one Ordinato Psalm so you can reduce the enemy's armor. If you want to use this Psalm doctrine, you have to consider that your crit chance get reduced by 30%. A good way to fight against it is getting this enchant. This will ignore the minus 30% and make all your crits guaranteed critical hits for 3 seconds. Other great choices for your Psalm doctrines are those. The first thing I would go for is the physical attacks tree and get this skill. Vulnerabilities increase your damage by 10% per stack, so at 10 stacks you have 100% increased damage. The last skill is also decent, increasing your damage up to 50%. I would also recommend putting 3 points in the range tree for ammo mastery, but the other skills and the middle one is not so attractive. I also recommend always putting 3 points in here when you are using any combo weapons, because this will get triggered on all of your combo weapon skill attacks. And as for most builds, I would put points in the critical hit tree. Torment is great for the extra suppression damage, Red Thirst can give you up to 100% increased damage, and Berserker Rage gives you some nice additional healing. We can also easily support this Signum with this enchant, since we have 3 skills that are channeling, so it's easy to keep our enrage tokens up even with this Signum. Great choices for your perks are this one or this one for the ammo capacity, this one if you use Acts of Faith, this one can give you up to 75% range damage bonus if you stay close. This one can also give you 75% damage bonus if you play with a full faith bar. This one if you want the extra supreme cooldown reduction, or take attention, you will get some global cooldown. And in your last slot, you can decide if you play on lower levels, you could use another damaging perk Or if you need the survivability or play high level missions, then I would recommend using Blessing of Saint Victorious. The last thing I want to mention is that this combo has a ranged and melee weapon, and because of the melee weapon we get the shield drain and life drain enchants, which are extremely strong. Those two alone can give you an extreme survivability boost. Next, let's have a look at the Inferno Pistol and Chainsword combo. The first skill is Sweep. It has a very short cooldown, so you can keep spamming it and dealing AoE damage. The second skill is Beam Charge, similar as the standard beam from the Inferno Pistol, just now you are moving towards the target. It is channeled, so as before the same things apply. Your enrich tokens won't decrease while you keep channeling it, and you can generate them easily with that. It has the Barrage tag, so it deals up to 120% more damage while we channeling it. We also get armor breaking, which is always great. With the Burning tag, we can skip the last skill in the heat attacks tree. A trick to stop advancing forward while you're channeling it is if you put your mouse close to your character, she won't walk. You can see we easily generate enrich tokens, and it's not even an optimized build yet. The third skill is Inferno Pirate. It's like a short whirlwind attack that is mainly there to apply both heat and physical vulnerabilities, and it also applies burn on hit all around you. It has a very high cooldown, but with the right setup you could decrease it immensely. For example, with the perk Tactician, giving you 30% supreme cooldown, or Disenchant, or this skill from the movement skill tree. But overall, I think it's a bad way to apply vulnerabilities, mainly because of the long cooldown. I would choose the perk Ad Hoc Subjugation instead, to get physical and heat vulnerability, or Disenchant, or the skills in the melee and heat attacks tree. For example, you could mix up this one, Expose Weakness, so you can get the physical vulnerabilities with your sweep, and you want to put points anyways in your heat attacks tree for the damage, and get this skill, so you apply heat vulnerabilities with all of your heat attacks. The last skill is Inferno Beam. It's a charged shot. This is very important and what you wanna use always. Charge it for 1.5 seconds to increase the damage by 375%. It's also armor breaking, so it's perfect for harder elite enemies. And what's also interesting is that it's persistent. It leaves a damaging area on the ground if you kill an enemy with it. And it gets both the single target and AoE tag. So we should be able to get both the benefits from the single target tree and the AoE tree. Also enchants, shards and so on. If we get the middle skill in the AoE tree, we reduce the cooldown on AoE hits and kill. So if we are using the sweep and hitting and killing enemies with it, we can reduce the cooldown of our Inferno beam. As you can see, the damage is really low. So the way you want to use it, first apply debuffs and especially heat vulnerabilities on the target, and after that use the skill. So to conclude, you want to use the first two skills as your main damaging source and the way to apply debuffs, and use the last two as fillers or for specific enemies like armored ones. If you get a high cooldown setup, you will be able to use the last two skills much more often. So let me give you some recommendations now. We again have a ranged and melee weapon combo, so we can get shield and life drain as enchants. As I mentioned before, they are extremely strong for survivability. You might want to get minus overheat as your secondary enchant, so you can channel your beam charge longer. Also, because of beam charge, we can easily generate enriched tokens with this neural implant. It even allows us to use this signum with this enchant. You want to get this skill in the warfare tree, Scorching Hatred, since our combo deals both physical and heat damage. The flurry skill in warfare triggers on every skill use of combo weapons, so you might wanna get that as well. And as I mentioned before, maybe the 3 points in the melee tree, so you can apply physical vulnerabilities, the heat attacks tree for the increased damage and overheat cooldown, but also because of the heat vulnerability, the movement skill tree for the cooldown reduction, the AoE tree for the damage increase, cooldown reduction and other benefits, and as always the critical hits tree is a solid choice. For your perks, you could use something like heat sinks, so you can decrease your overheat more and get some heat damage bonus. Another good choice is this one, so you get also a higher overheat threshold. Then you can use something like this one for the range damage bonus. This one if you use Acts of Faith. This one for an easy 50% damage bonus, which will also include your melee attack, which this one doesn't. With this one, you have a higher faith gain, and if you play with a full faith bar, you get a 75% damage bonus. Tactician if you need a supreme cooldown reduction. And the Puritan perk is also a solid choice, giving you heat damage bonus and an energy shield. For your last choice, you again can choose another damaging perk, or if you play on high level missions, use again Blessing of Saint Victorious. Good choices for your silent doctrines are those. The last tip I wanna give, if you use in your Sacred Rites section the Burning Devotion one, you will get a free fire aura, so you don't have to socket it. It's smaller than the socketed one. The big one is the socketed one, and this one is the Sacred Rite one. It can still give you all the benefits from the normal fire aura, like it helps you to apply on-hit effects, heat vulnerabilities, if you have a skill like this, so you have a much easier time to increase your damage on your targets. I hope this guide was helpful, and look out for part 2. Don't forget to like and subscribe.